Hello, everyone, and welcome to Kilowatt, a podcast about electric vehicles, renewable energy, autonomous driving, and much, much more. My name is Bodie, and I am your host. And on today's episode, we are going to talk about delivery numbers, not just from Tesla, not just from Rivian, but a bunch of different companies. And then on top of all of that, we have news to talk about. So let's go ahead and start the show. I want to start actually with audio clip from Steve Sheridan. Last week, I talked about Tesla sending managers to employees' homes to check up and see if they're actually sick or not. I asked for feedback from the community, and I got one piece of feedback from Bart Bouchatz in the form of a message, and then I got another piece from Steve Sheridan, who gave me an audio clip. So I'm going to read Bart's here. I was actually going to run this through 11 Labs because Bart lives in Ireland. He's from Belgium. I was like, oh, we could throw a little accent on this, and honestly. The Irish accent made it sound like a leprechaun, and I couldn't find a Belgium accent, so I just went ahead. I'm going to read this in my normal voice so as not to offend anyone. Although, if you would like me to send you the Irish file, I will be happy to do that so you can see what it sounded like. Anyway, here's what Bart had to say. This strikes me as bullying rather than trying to resolve any issues. What exactly does a manager know about health? As someone who was once off sick long-term in Europe, I have some experience here. Having managers do home visits is absolutely not normal. The normal procedure is to arrange a medical appointment for the employee with a doctor appointed by the employer for a second opinion. I had two such second opinions, one for my employer and one for the government, since I was claiming a benefit to top off my reduced wages. Doctors checking health stuff is normal. Managers making house calls is not. So I'm going to refrain from commenting one way or another whether I agree or not with with this feedback from Bart and Steve, because I want to try and get a wider conversation going, right? So let's go ahead and play Steve's clip, and we'll see if this spawns more conversation down the road here. And thank you to Bart and Steve for providing the feedback.
Hi, Bodie. Listener Steve here. You asked about our thoughts regarding the Giga Berlin sick leave story. My views on this depend on my specific situation, which is a retired person living in the US. When I was working, my company provided paid time off or PTO. This is the time we could be away from work, whether it was for sick leave or vacation or for anything you wanted to use it for. We had a fixed allotment of PTO every year, and we could roll over our unused PTO to the next year up to a point. I think the maximum PTO you could accumulate was 5 weeks, and after that, you were not able to roll over any more PTO on a yearly basis. So there were a limited number of sick days you could take, assuming you used some or most of your PTO for vacation. For that reason, if you fell short on available sick days, you might be tempted to come into work even when you didn't feel well. Not a good situation for the other employees. From this perspective, I feel the actions Tesla is taking in Germany are way too invasive and rather big brotherish. My experience with my US company was that it was totally up to the employee to decide how and when they use their PTO for sick leave. Having my company monitor my use of PTO for sick leave, I feel, would be way out of line. An exception to this would be if an employee had submitted a workers' compensation claim. I didn't have direct experience with this, but I believe the government, not our company, could place restrictions on an employee's actions and could monitor them while they were not working due to a workers' comp claim. With all of this background, I think things would be different if I worked in Germany, where there apparently is a more lenient sick leave policy. I could see some employees taking advantage of a policy that granted unlimited sick leave, for example. Even in this case, I still feel uncomfortable with the company checking up on the employee's health status.
All right. You have heard from both Steve and Bart. So two different people, although they do know each other and they are friends, but two different people, two different continents, two different experiences. What are your thoughts? You can send me an audio clip or send me a message. It's Bodie, Bodie, at 918digital.com. And if you want to further this conversation, if nobody's interested in doing that, that's fine. We don't have to continue this conversation. I'm trying to do something that involves more community feedback on the show. And I know that a lot of you send me emails and we have interactions that way, and those are private. But what I want to try to do is I want to try to bring different perspectives from the people in the community because we happen to have a very smart and educated community. I wanted to bring I want to bring something more to this that more than just me. So I'm trying some things out. So if you want to help me out and send me a audio clip, audio is better, by the way. You can do so. It's Bodie again, Bodie Bodie at 918digital.com. And then on a completely different direction here, I want to welcome Electric Viking. He's a content creator from Australia. You can find his content on YouTube. He's here in the United States and putting out a lot of great content. Gene, who's been on the show before, has been sharing this content with me. So there's some, Australian perspective of driving the Cybertruck and all that stuff. So go check out Electric Viking's YouTube channel. I'll put a link in the show notes. All right, let's get to the news. Fisker Motors is being investigated by the Securities and Exchange Commission. So I don't think this is a really big deal, but here's the thing. Fisker is close to, going out of business if, they definitely have a foot in that proverbial grave, right? They made agreements with their creditors when it comes to their liquidation plan. The Securities and Exchange Commission said not so fast, and they filed an objection to the plan. And this is all whether or not there were violations, SEC violations, leading up to filing for bankruptcy. So we'll keep an eye on this, and I will keep you posted. Also, kind of as another side note here, if I could recommend a video, Rich Rebuilds on YouTube picked up a Fisker Ocean to rebuild. I haven't had a chance to watch it yet, but I am a fan of Rich Rebuilds, so I feel comfortable recommending it without watching it. So I'll put a link to that in the show notes as well. All right, let's get to some deliveries. NIO delivered 832 Envo L60 EVs in the first 3 days. If you don't remember what this vehicle is, the L60 is a Model Y competitor. What makes it special is that it's a Model Y competitor that starts around 21,000 US dollars, which is, very affordable. NIO also delivered 21,181 EVs in September of 2024. That is up 35.4% from September 2023. And then in terms of total vehicles sold for NIO in the third quarter of 2024, we're looking at 61,855 total vehicles sold. So NIO is definitely heading on the right direction. Moving on to Rivian. Rivian had a rough Q3 2024. Let's just kind of put this into perspective. Last year, during the same time period, they delivered 15,564 vehicles. This year, Q3 2024, they delivered 10,018 vehicles. So they saw a decrease of around 5,000 vehicles, a little more than 5,000. Rivian said the numbers had nothing to do with customer demand. There was an issue in the supply chain. No word on when this issue is going to be solved or what exactly the issue was. The company did revise their annual production numbers. And as you can imagine, the new numbers are less than what they originally projected. But right now, Rivian's saying they're going to produce between 47 and 49,000 vehicles in 2024. All right, that leads us to GM. GM actually had a really good Q3 for them in terms of EVs, right? GM sold 32,195 vehicles in the United States during Q3 2024. That's not around the world, that's just here in the United States. Deliveries for GM increased 60% year over year and increased 46% compared to Q2 2024. So Q3 was a good quarter for GM. The deliveries or sales broke down like this. The Chevy Equinox took first place with nearly 10,000 cars sold. Then you have the Chevy Blazer EV, and these are all EVs. These aren't ICE vehicles. The Chevy Blazer EV, just under 8,000. The Cadillac Lyriq, just over 7,000. And then the GMC Hummer gets around 4,000 vehicles sold. And then we go through the Silverado, which is about 2,000. GMC Sierra, 387. Bright Drop Vans came in at let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7th with 246. And the Chevy Bolt sold 168. These were left over from when Chevy stopped producing the Bolts, but there was still, some in the pipeline. So those were 168 vehicles total. So not too shabby for General Motors. Now, here in a moment, we are going to talk about Tesla's delivery numbers, and they're going to blow all of these companies out of the water. But for right now, we'll give GM their flowers and say good job. We'll compare GM against itself and not against all these other companies out there. This next story doesn't have anything to do with delivery numbers per se. It has to do with market share. So we all know Norway is probably the fastest country in the world that's going electric. In September, there were 12,966 total vehicles sold, which is up 25% year over year. But that's not the news, because that's all of the vehicles sold, whether they're ICE vehicles or electric vehicles, 12,966. The news for this particular story is that 97.5% of those vehicles were plug-in vehicles, so battery plug-in vehicles. Whether those were hybrids, so hybrids took 1.1%, and fully electric vehicles took 96.4%. And it was kind of interesting as to the breakdown of the top EVs sold in Norway. So the Model 3 and the Model Y took the top two spots. Model Y number 1 at 2,105, Model 3 number 2 at 2,062. And they actually accounted, Tesla accounted for around a third of the EVs sold in September in Norway. The Volvo EX30 took third place, selling 741 vehicles, and which is great. By the way, this is just kind of another side note here. This is going to be a show full of side notes. In September, or as of September 30th, Volvo had produced 100,000 EX30s. And if you don't know what the EX30 is, it's a Volvo's $38,000-ish electric SUV. In fourth place, we had the Skoda Enyaq. 736 vehicles were sold. And then this surprised the heck out of me. The Toyota BZ4X rounded out fifth place and sold a total of 606 vehicles. I don't see many of these vehicles, and honestly, I don't hear much about them either. But congratulations to Toyota for taking fifth place in Norway. Okay, let's move on to our next story. Hyundai and Waymo have agreed to a multi-year partnership that would turn the 2025 Ioniq 5 into Waymo's sixth generation taxi. So testing for the two companies will start in late 2025. It's not like you're going to see Ioniq 5s, driving themselves around Phoenix anytime soon, but late 2025 is soon enough. But this does make sense to me. I don't know if this has been confirmed or just rumors, but it sounds like the Jaguar I-Pace isn't long for the world, which is what Waymo is using currently for their driverless vehicles. I think the Jaguar I-Pace is a great looking car. I've never driven in one, but I've gotten an opportunity to crawl around one before, and it is lickable luxury. It is just dripping with luxury. It's a great looking car on the inside. It's super comfortable, feels super futuristic, but it's also a very expensive car, whereas Waymo can use the Ioniq 5 and still get a great vehicle, but a much more affordable price. Let's see here. While we're talking about Hyundai, I lost my place. Hyundai has sold over 30,000 Ioniq 5s in 2024. 11,590 of those were in Q3 2024, which is up 5% from the previous quarter in 2023. I realize that I'm rattling off a bunch of numbers, and that might frustrate some of you. I apologize. All right, let's get to our final EV story of this segment. And this story comes from Bruce W., who's been on the show before. He came on and chatted with us about his Kia Niro, and he also came on and gave us a lesson on the different types of braking systems in EVs. But before I go into the article, I have to tell you a story. Way back in the late 80s and early 90s, I took a computer class with a super nerdy teacher who used to talk about the future of technology. He had all of these crazy ideas, some of which have come true, some of which have not. But one of the things that he talked about was the future of car travel. And in the future of car travel, he talked about a lot of possibilities when it comes to autonomous cars. And honestly, I don't even know if he said specifically they were autonomous cars. I don't even know if he used the term self-driving cars. But the point is one of the things that he was talking to us about was one day we would dig up our existing roads and install some sort of infrastructure underneath it, whether that was magnets or some type of fiber optic cable that used radio waves. I don't remember exactly how all of this went. To be honest with you, this guy didn't care if I showed up to class a little bit high. He didn't care if I showed up to class at all. And I still got to be in his class. So some of the details are a little bit fuzzy. But the point was, he was trying to expand our world through technology, right? And in this particular instance, we would put something in the road. The cars would receive a signal from the road and the cars around our car, and we would be able to have autonomous driving of sorts. We'd be able to fall asleep, at least on the freeway. So we'd be able to fall asleep and wake up in Tacoma or wherever we're going, right? Well, that brings us, that long rambling story brings us to Bruce's article that he shared with us. The Oak Ridge National Laboratory and the University of Western Michigan, or Michigan University, teamed up to install raised pavement markers that would transmit information about the road to the vehicles traveling on that same road. Now, you may be saying, hey, wait a minute, I have all of this really cool self driving technology in my car. Why do I need this? Well, think of it as a backup system to your autonomous driving hardware and software. When it's really foggy, rainy, or snowing outside, your vehicle may not be able to safely navigate the road. So, this system would tell you, hey, we have a steep curve here, we have a little bit of elevation here. It would give your vehicle a heads up, whereas it may be getting limited data in these situations. They successfully tested the system in Chattanooga, Tennessee. The car was able to receive signals from up to 50 markers at one time through a radio frequency that was fed through an algorithm. The system performed 10 times better than the standard autonomous driving systems when navigating steep curves. That's not the whole test, but when navigating steep curves, which are important. There's also the added benefit of energy savings. So if the car is relying on these road markers that use radio signals, it will actually use less energy, which is important if you are driving an electric vehicle. When you compare it to the energy draw that comes from the autonomous driving hardware and software. So pretty cool technology. Thank you, Bruce, for sharing this with us. All right, everybody, that is it for our EV news segment. I do want to let everybody know I have booked my trip to CES. I'm going to CES this year. I'm looking forward to it. If you want to support the show and help pay for that trip, because that's what the Patreon is meant to do, is pay for expenses of this show, go ahead and go to patreon.com/kilowatt and sign up. And I'm really looking forward to going to CES this year. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. My buddy Rob Dunwood is going to be there. So Rob and I will get to meet in person and hang out, maybe share a meal. Looking forward to that. All right, let's move on to our Tesla news. Tesla has announced their delivery totals for Q3 2024, and it was just short of expectations. So Tesla does this a little different than other companies. They break it down into production numbers and delivery numbers. I wish all companies did this. It would make it much easier. So in terms of production numbers, Tesla produced 443,668 Model 3s and Model Ys. They delivered 439,975 Model 3s and Model Ys. Now, this next area Tesla breaks out into other vehicles. It used to be Model S and Model X, and now they just say other models. So they produce 26,128 other models, which includes, again, Tesla Semi, Model S, Model X, and Cybertruck. And they delivered 22,915 other vehicles. That gives us a grand total of 469,796 vehicles. And remember, that's all of the vehicles Tesla produced in Q3 2024. In terms of deliveries, we're looking at total numbers, all of the vehicles, 462,890. Now, it's a little bit of a bummer that they're not breaking out how many Tesla semis they're selling, how many Cybertrucks they've produced, Model S and Model X. It'd be really nice if they broke that out. I don't think it would make a big difference one way or the other if they did. They just choose not to. But we do kind of have some information when it comes to Cybertruck numbers and approximately how many they've sold since they started producing it back in November, December of 2023. And this comes from a recall notice. So thank goodness for recalls. Tesla issued a recall because of a rear view camera problem. Basically, if you remember right, the Cybertruck does not have a traditional rear view mirror. It has a camera, and it sounds like there's a chance, it doesn't happen all the time or it may not happen ever, that the rear view image may not display within 2 seconds after putting the vehicle in reverse. This is a simple fix. It's an over-the-air update, and it's fixed. But anyway, because it's a recall, we know approximately how many Cybertrucks have been affected. And that is a total of 27,185. And that number is current until the middle of September, so sometime around September 14th, September 15th. So we could probably safely say there's about 30,000 Cybertrucks on the road. But there's about to be even more because Tesla has just started sending out invitations for people to start configuring their non-foundation Cybertruck orders. Now, we don't have a whole lot of information about what that truck's going to look like in terms of specs, but we do know it's going to have a range of 325 miles, which is just a bit shy than the Foundation Series 340 miles of range, and deliveries are expected to start in October or November of 2024. And then we should also mention Tesla Energy. Tesla Energy deployed 6.9 gigawatt hours of energy storage in Q3 2024, which is down a little bit because in Q2 2024, they delivered 9.4 gigawatt hours of storage. Tesla also announced that there are now 750,000 Powerwalls installed across the world. Last year, Tesla updated us and told us that they had deployed 500,000 Powerwalls total since 2015. So in 1 year, they installed another 250,000 Powerwalls. So not too bad for the Tesla Energy team for sure. And then finally, we have a little update on the Tesla supercharger network. Not long ago, Elon fired a bunch of people on the supercharger team. And when that happened, everybody, including me, was like, what's going to happen with the supercharger network? Is it going to go downhill? Can it possibly grow without a team? Well, let's look at how Tesla did Q3 2024 when it comes to superchargers. They opened 2,800 supercharger stalls, which is a year-over-year increase of 23%. And that brings the total number of supercharger stalls to 62,400 worldwide. The supercharger network delivered 1.4 terawatt hours of energy in the third quarter, which is the equivalent to 150 million gallons of gasoline and offset more than 3 billion pounds of CO2. And while it's mostly Teslas charging on that network, Ford, Rivian, and GM are also allowed to charge on the supercharger network as well. And I thought I would share with you the other vehicles that are going to get access to the supercharger network in 2024. So right now we're looking at Polestar, Nissan, Mercedes-Benz, Volvo, and Genesis. And with that, that wraps up our very dense news show. And hopefully, I didn't sound like too much of a bozo. feel like I'm stumbling over my words a little bit. So hopefully everything is completely clear. If I wasn't clear about something, send me an email. It's Bodie, Bodie, at 918digital.com. And then you can also use that same email address to send me an audio clip about anything that we talked about. And literally can be anything that we talked about today. It doesn't have to be the Tesla sending managers out to see if people are actually sick or not story. It could be anything. I'm really trying to do something different here. That does not guarantee that I'm going to play it on the show. Maybe it fits, maybe it doesn't fit. But like I said, I'm trying different things here to make this show maybe not so univocal. All right, enough of me blabbing. Let's go ahead and end the show. I hope you all had a wonderful weekend. I will talk to you on Tuesday, and then on Thursday we have Tesla's robo taxi event. All right, everybody, take care, and I will talk to you on Tuesday.